That almost imperceptible pause, as if pronouncing its syllables were an act of involuntary confession. He's there, impeccable in his married life. But there's a tremor, more subtle, visceral, every time you walk into the room. I'll tell you something that Carl Jung discovered and that changes everything. A married man who falls in love with you without being able to say it is living a silent psychological hell. It's not attraction. It's not just desire. It's something primal happening in the deepest layers of his psyche. A call from the self that he can't ignore, but he can't answer either. You have become what Jungians call the bearer of the anima, the living embodiment of what is missing in his soul. And here's the brutal truth. The more he tries to forget you, the more you infiltrate his dreams. Because you don't just occupy a space in his life, you inhabit your unconscious. In this video, we decode the 8 psychological signals that are impossible to hide when he loves but cannot speak. Get ready. What you're about to discover is disturbing. 1. The look he can't control. There is a type of gaze that does not pass through the filter of reason. It happens before the conscious mind has time to censor. Jung understood this perfectly when he talked about how the unconscious manifests itself through the body before we can control it. It's that moment when his eyes meet you in the room and something changes in the atmosphere. It's not a casual look. It's loaded, intense, and it lasts exactly 1 heartbeat longer than it should. The married man who develops feelings for another person experiences a brutal conflict between his persona and his authentic desire. The persona is that social mask that he has built over the years. It is the responsible husband, the serious professional, the man who fulfills his commitments. But when you show up, something inside it refuses to obey that mask. And the first place where this leaks is in the eyes. Pay attention to the quality of that look. It is not superficial admiration. It is recognition. As if something about him identifies something in you that resonates with a frequency that he didn't even know existed within him. Jung would call this the encounter with the anima, the feminine part of the masculine soul that usually remains dormant. When he looks at you, he's not just seeing you. He is seeing a reflection of something that lives within him and has never been awakened before. The interesting thing is that he himself realizes that this look gives him away, then begins a fascinating psychological game. He tries to avoid her eyes. He turns his face away, pretends to be focused on the phone. But it is exactly this desperate attempt not to look that reveals everything. Because if it was real indifference, he would just look normally and move on. The effort not to look shows that looking means something. It means too much. Sometimes you'll catch that moment when he thinks no one is watching. It may be in a meeting where he thinks he is discreet, or that second before you realize he's in the room. His unguarded gaze carries a raw vulnerability. It's almost painful because it's so exposed. There is a hunger there. Not sexual necessarily, but something deeper. A hunger for connection, to be seen in essence, to exist beyond the obligations and social roles he plays every day. Jung observed that the eyes are direct windows to the unconscious, because we cannot completely control pupillary microexpressions and dilatations. When he looks at you, his pupils dilate involuntarily. It's pure biology. Their nervous system responds to your presence as if you were both danger and reward. It creates that intensity that you feel but can't name. Another crucial detail is how his gaze changes when other people are around. In front of his wife or colleagues, he trains a forced neutrality. The look is too professional, too polite. This artificiality also gives the game away, because with other people he is naturally cordial. With you, he has to make an effort to look normal, and this effort is deafening for those who know how to read the signs. There are also those moments when his gaze carries an inexplicable sadness, as if he were lamenting a whole life he can't have. A road not taken. Jung talked about the grief of unlived possibilities, and you can see this grief in his eyes. It's not self-pity. It is the acute awareness that there is a real connection going on, but the circumstances of his life do not allow it to develop. Then his eyes become the only place where this truth can exist without consequences, where he can love you in silence, where the two of you can share a parallel world that exists only in those few seconds of eye contact. And then he blinks, dodges, and goes back to the life he chose. But that look said it all. 2. Coincidences that are not coincidences. Suddenly he started going to the same coffee shop as you. It appears in the same events. It's always available when you need something at work, and it all seems casual, natural. Coincidence. But the unconscious does not understand coincidences. Jung even developed the concept of synchronicity to explain how seemingly random events carry deep meaning when they involve genuine psychic connection. Married man who has developed feelings for you will begin to orbit your life, not in an obvious or persecutory way, but through a constant presence that seems organic. He himself may not consciously realize what he is doing. His unconscious has taken over and is creating opportunities for closeness. It is as if a magnetic force pulled him towards you without him making rational decisions about it. Observe the patterns. How many times in the last few months have you met by chance? If you really map this out, you'll find that the frequency of these encounters defies any statistical logic. It shows up where you are with a regularity that can't be explained by chance alone, because it is not by chance. It is his unconscious tracking his presence and creating situations where you share the same space. The genius of this is that it always has a plausible justification. I needed to solve something in the department where you work. I had to go through that street. He was invited to that event as well. Each individual explanation makes sense, but when you put them all together, the pattern becomes undeniable. There is an unconscious intention operating behind the scenes. Jung understood that the unconscious is much more intelligent than our rational mind. It creates complex situations that our conscience would never have planned for because they would be too risky or too revealing. But the unconscious does not care about that. He wants proximity to what he recognizes as essential, so he manipulates circumstances, agenda, and geography to make you intersect. There are also those messages that arrive just when you were thinking about him. It sends a text on a subject right at the moment you were looking at something related. These synchronicities are not mystical in the supernatural sense. They are the result of two psyches that have begun to resonate at the same frequency. You are unconsciously tuned. Another sign is when he always seems to know things about you that he shouldn't know, small details that you casually mentioned weeks ago. He remembers why his every word was recorded. Meanwhile, with other people he is politely inattentive. With you, every piece of information is filed as if it were precious. Then he uses these details to create new coincidences. It mentions that movie you said you wanted to see. Bring that book you said you were looking for. His wife probably doesn't notice these patterns because she's in the household routine. She is not mapping his movements with the attention that you, even unintentionally, end up mapping, and he unconsciously takes advantage of this marital blindness to create a space where he can be close to you, without arousing suspicion. The most fascinating thing is when it starts to appear in your moments of vulnerability. You're having a rough day and it comes up with a message or physical presence. It's not telepathy. It is unconscious attention. He is so attuned to your energy that he notices subtle changes in your behavior, tone of voice, or even the way you write. Then his unconscious pushes him to act disguised as coincidence. And when you ask him how he knew you needed that at that moment, he himself can't explain it, because it was not a conscious decision. It was his self responding to the silent call of his self. And in this deep territory of the psyche, there are no coincidences. Only truths that cannot yet be said out loud. If this video made you realize something you couldn't put into words, it's because it touched your unconscious. In the pinned comment, you'll find the Jung Method, a guide to stop repeating hidden emotional patterns. 3. The heavy silence that says it all. There is a kind of silence that weighs more than 1,000 words. It's not the absence of sound. It is the presence of everything that cannot be said. Jung deeply understood how the unsaid carries more psychic energy than the verbalized. When a married man develops feelings that he cannot express, silence becomes the main language of your connection, and this silence speaks volumes for those who know how to listen. Notice those moments when you're together and the conversation dies naturally. But instead of discomfort, there is a density in the air, as if the space between you is saturated with unspoken things. He looks at you. You look back, and in that silence a whole conversation takes place that never reached the lips. It's almost deafening because it's so noisy internally. You feel the weight of what he would like to say but can't, and he feels that you feel it. This silence is qualitatively different from the silence he shares with other people. With the wife, there is probably a silence of worn familiarity. That stillness of someone who no longer has anything to discover in the other. With colleagues, silence is just a pause between professional matters. But with you, silence vibrates. He is pregnant with possibilities, of repressed confessions, of a parallel world that exists only in the unsaid. Jung drew attention to how the unconscious communicates through symbols and gestures when the word is blocked. So pay attention to what happens during those moments. He changes the alliance. This gesture is not random. It is his unconscious remembering the commitment that prevents him from speaking. Or he takes a deep breath, as if he's about to say something important, but then looks away and lets the moment pass. You just witnessed a confession that died before you were born. There are also those silences on the phone or in messages. He reads your message and takes hours to respond. Not because you forgot or are busy, but because he is stuck between what he wants to say and what is safe to say. So he writes, erases, rewrites, delete again. When he finally responds, the message is too neutral, too careful. And that's exactly why you know there's a fire burning behind those measured words. Another powerful aspect is when he shares something personal with you and then stays silent waiting for your reaction. That silence is loaded with vulnerability. He just showed you a part of himself that he may never have shown to anyone, and now it's exposed, waiting to see if you'll honor that trust or tear it apart. At this moment, it is an unasked question. Do you understand me? Do you see who I really am? Jung observed that in the depths of the psyche, communication happens at levels that transcend verbal language. There is a direct transmission from soul to soul. When you are silent together, you are not just silent. They are in psychic communion. Your selves are talking at a frequency that words would only get in the way. Also pay attention to what he never mentions. His wife hardly shows up in his conversations with you. Not because he's trying to hide that he's married. That is obvious, but because talking about her in that space you share seems like a desecration. How to bring the real world into a dream. So there is a tacit agreement about that part of his life, and that combined silence creates a bubble where you can exist in an alternate reality. Sometimes his silence is protection. He knows that if he starts saying what he really feels, he won't be able to stop. The floodgates will open and everything will collapse. So he chooses this containment as a way to maintain some control over the chaos within. It is a dam about to burst. You can feel the pressure build up. And ironically, this forced restraint communicates the intensity of the feeling far more than any verbal statement could, because statements can be discarded or misinterpreted. But a heavy silence like this doesn't lie. He is the naked truth refusing to clothe himself with inappropriate words. It is the loudest scream anyone can give without making a sound. 4. When it protects you as primitive instinct, there's something deeply revealing about the way a man reacts when you're in a vulnerable situation. It is not a conscious decision. It's something that comes from much older layers of the psyche. Jung studied how certain archetypes manifest themselves through instinctive behaviors that seem programmed into the nervous system. And a man who loves a woman, even without being able to say it, will automatically take on the role of protector. It is involuntary, visceral, impossible to hide. Notice how he reacts when someone treats you badly or disrespects you. His jaw locks. The whole body tenses. Even if he doesn't say anything at the time, you can see the anger in his eyes. It's disproportionate to someone who should just be an acquaintance or colleague. This intense reaction happens because in his unconscious, you already occupy an emotional territory that triggers his most primitive instincts. It doesn't have to be a dramatic situation. It could be something small. You mention that you have a headache and he immediately wants to know if you have taken something, if you need to go home, if someone can help you. Meanwhile, other people complain of the same symptoms in front of him and he barely registers. The difference in attention is striking. With you, it stays in surveillance mode. Any indication that you are not well activates an internal alarm in it. Jung talked about how the archetype of the protector is deeply connected to the male anima. When a woman activates a man's anima, she automatically becomes the object of his caring instincts. It is not condescension. It's not machismo. It is something much more primordial. It is his self-recognizing in you an essential part of his own soul, and therefore to protect you is to protect his own psychic integrity. Notice how it always stands between you and any potential threat. It can be literal, like standing between you and a crowd, or symbolic, such as taking the blame for a mistake you made at work so that you don't suffer consequences. He creates a shield around you without you asking, sometimes without you even realizing it. But he is constantly monitoring the environment for dangers that may affect you. There's also the way he anticipates your needs. You haven't even finished saying that you're cold and he's already taking off his coat. You mention that you need help with something and he's already rearranging his schedule. This anticipation does not come from social obligation. It comes from such a deep attunement that it picks up your signals even before you completely externalize them. Another fascinating aspect is how he defends you, even when you're not present. Someone speaks ill of you and he immediately argues. Someone questions his competence and he lists his qualities. He becomes your automatic advocate in every situation. And the most interesting thing is that he does this even though he knows that he can raise suspicions. Jung observed that these behaviors reveal an unconscious fusion between his identity and yours. At the deepest level of the psyche, an aggression against you is felt as aggression against yourself. One of your pains is his pain. This loss of ego boundaries happens only when there is a genuine soul connection. You can't fake or force this kind of instinctive response. Also pay attention to how he reacts when you are sad or upset. His discomfort is palpable. He can't just leave you in that state. You need to do something. Fix, solve, change. Even though the problem has no practical solution, he desperately seeks a way to restore his peace. Because his disturbance disturbs his internal balance. He only breathes properly again when he knows you're okay. This emotional dependence on the well-being of the other is one of the clearest signs of unconfessed love. Because with his wife, he has probably already developed a certain numbness. He can see it badly and get on with the day. But with you, every tear is a stab. Each smile is a relief that runs through his entire body. You have become the emotional ruler that measures whether his day was good or bad, and there's no hiding it when every cell of it reacts to your presence as if you're essential to its very survival. 5. The social mask that cracks in his presence. Every married man builds over the years an impeccable persona. Jung dedicated a good part of his work to explaining how this social mask is not falsehood, but a psychological need to function in the world. It's the version of him that shows up at family gatherings, at dinners with the boss, in hallway conversations. She is the stable husband, the competent professional, the man who has everything under control. But when you enter the room, something in this careful construction begins to crack. The first thing you'll notice is the inconsistency. With everyone he maintains that balanced tone, that measured cordiality, but with you his voice changes. It gets smoother, or more lively, or it freezes in the middle of a sentence. He loses that automatic control he exercises over himself all the time. It's as if your presence turns off his autopilot and suddenly he needs to think about every word, every gesture, every facial expression. Notice when he is in a group. He can talk to 5 people at the same time while maintaining that perfect social performance. But then you ask a simple question and he stumbles over the answer. Forget what you were going to say. You need to ask you to repeat. It's not distraction. It's overload. The psychic energy he uses to hold the persona in place is being drained by the presence of you. Then the mask starts to slip. There are also those moments when he lets slip something too true, an opinion that does not match the image of a happy husband, a vulnerability that contradicts the facade of a resolved man, and you see the instant panic in his eyes. He just revealed himself beyond the approved script. He said something that the persona would never say, and now you're desperately trying to shove that truth back in. Notice how different your dog is when he's alone with you compared to when people are around. In front of others, he intensifies the persona. It gets even more formal, more distant, because you need to compensate for the fact that with you the mask naturally loosens. It is an attempt at damage control. But this sudden change in emotional temperature depending on the audience also gives the game away. Another powerful sign is when he laughs. With other people, his laugh is polite, controlled. But with you, sometimes genuine laughter escapes. That kind of laughter that comes from the bottom of his chest and takes him by surprise. In those moments, you're seeing the real man, not the persona, and immediately afterwards he recomposes himself, as if he had made a mistake in allowing himself that authenticity. Jung observed that the persona exists to protect us from excessive intimacy with the world. But when someone manages to break through this protection, the natural response is to try to strengthen the barrier even more. That's why he sometimes gets strangely cold or overly professional with you. It is not rejection. It's fear. Fear that if he relaxes his guard completely, everything he has been holding will collapse at once. Also pay attention to his mistakes. He calls you by the wrong name, confuses dates or information when they talk to you. It looks disorganized or clunky. This does not happen with other people because with them, he is operating in the automatic mode of the persona. But with you, the persona is constantly being sabotaged by the authentic self that wants to emerge. And in this internal war, he loses his composure. The most telling thing is to notice his tiredness after interactions with you. Keeping the mask in place against the force you exert takes brutal energy. So when you walk away, he looks exhausted. It's not physical fatigue. It's psychic exhaustion from spending hours holding a dam. And the stronger his feeling, the more cracks appear in this containment, until there comes a point where the persona can't take it anymore. And in those moments of temporary collapse, you see who he really is. Vulnerable, confused, in love, desperate, and completely unable to hide it from you. 6. The emotional gifts she never receives. There is a type of gift that cannot be wrapped. You can't buy it in a store. It has no monetary value. Jung called this libidinal investing, which is basically where a person's psychic energy is being deposited. And when a married man quietly loves another woman, he starts giving you emotional gifts that his wife stopped receiving years ago, or maybe you never did. The first gift is genuine attention, not that divided attention while checking your cell phone or thinking about the next meeting. It's that total presence where you feel that at that moment, you are the only person who exists in his universe. He listens to you in a way that makes you feel like your every word matters. Each story, every opinion. He's not just waiting for his turn to speak. He's drinking from you. Compare that to what's likely to happen at home. Conversations on autopilot. Questions asked without real interest in the answers. A kind of superficial listening that fulfills the social function, but does not nourish the soul. But with you, he's hungry for every detail. Remember little things you mentioned weeks ago. Ask follow-up questions about that project you talked about. This quality of attention is not something he decides to give. It's something that springs up naturally because you awaken in him a curiosity that he thought he had lost. Another emotional gift is vulnerability. He shares fears, doubts, failures, things that a man usually does not reveal because he has been trained his whole life to be strong and unshakable. But with you, he lets his guard down. It shows the wounds. He admits his insecurities. Jung understood that this kind of openness only happens when there is a deep trust that vulnerability will be met with empathy, not judgment. It is likely that at home he maintains a facade of competence. The provider who has everything taken care of. The man who doesn't need emotional help. But this rigidity comes at a cost. It isolates him. And when someone appears with whom he can be fragile without fear of losing respect, it is liberating. You become the depository of fears that he cannot show anyone else. It also has the gift of authentic wonder. He celebrates his achievements in a disproportionate way. You've achieved something at work and he seems happier than you. It is not false. It's just that in his unconscious, your success is lived as if it were his too. That fusion of boundaries that Jung described. He feels genuinely proud and let it overflow. Compare it to marital dynamics where her achievements are likely to be met with a mechanical congratulations, without that twinkle in the eye, without that contagious excitement. Because the relationship has become routine and has lost that ability to marvel at the other. But with you, everything is new. Each revelation is a discovery. Every success of yours is a shared victory. Another powerful gift is quality time. Not the time left, but the time he actively creates to be with you. He rearranges appointments. He wakes up earlier, stay late. He finds gaps in the agenda that theoretically do not exist, because being close to you is not an obligation. It's oxygen. It is where he feels most alive. There is also the gift of inspiration. He tells you about dreams he buried, projects that he abandoned, versions of him that he left behind. And it's as if your presence rekindles possibilities that he had declared dead. You turn the mirror where he can see who he could have been, or who it can still be. And this kind of psychological rebirth is one of the most profound gifts that one human being can give to another. His wife receives material gifts. He receives financial stability. He receives routine companionship. But these gifts of the soul, these he keeps for you. And the saddest thing is that he knows it himself. He knows he is divided, that he should be giving all this to those who are at home. But the heart does not obey social contracts. And psychic energy flows to where it finds resonance. So he keeps filling you with these invisible gifts while carrying the guilt of being emotionally absent from where he should be present. 7. His body betrays what the voice hides, the mouth can lie. The mind can rationalize, but the body always delivers the truth. Jung deeply understood that the unconscious manifests itself through bodily symptoms, when consciousness tries to repress something too powerful. And when a married man is in love but can't admit it, his body becomes an open book for those who know how to read the signs. Start by observing his basic body language when you approach. His body literally reorients itself towards you. It is not a conscious choice. It is magnetic. He may be talking to someone else, but his torso subtly rotates to your side. Feet point toward you. It's as if there was a gravitational force pulling you to the center of his solar system. Notice the breathing. When you get close, the pace changes. It gets faster. Or he holds his breath for a second. Or take a deep breath as if you're preparing for something. This happens because his nervous system goes into alert mode. It is not fear. It's excitement. His body recognizes his presence as a significant event. His hands also speak volumes. When he's talking to you, notice what he does with them. He touches objects unnecessarily. Adjust the tie. Run your hand through your hair. These are nervous tension discharges. The energy he can't put into touching you needs to go somewhere. Then it leaks in restless and repetitive movements. Jung observed that accidental physical contact reveals profound truths. Pay attention when you bump into each other by chance. He doesn't immediately walk away like he would anyone else. There is a hesitation. One more second of contact, as if his body were drinking from that proximity before the rational mind orders it to retreat. Another powerful body sign is dilation of the pupils. You can't consciously control it. It is an automatic response of the nervous system when we see something that attracts us. So when he looks at you and his pupils expand, it's pure biology telling you what the mouth can't. It's his brain releasing dopamine in response to the sight of you. There is also the issue of personal space. With other people, he maintains a socially appropriate distance. But with you, he unconsciously reduces that distance. It is closer than it would need. It subtly invades your personal bubble, as if there is a force field pulling you towards each other. Notice his smile. Not that social smile he distributes to everyone, but that smile that appears when he sees you by surprise. It is involuntary, wide, genuine, illuminates his entire face before he has time to control it, and it lasts exactly 2 seconds before consciousness panics, and he composes the expression to something more neutral. Pay attention to how his body reacts when you mention leaving or saying goodbye. There is a visible contraction. The shoulders drop slightly. The expression withers. It's a miniature grief reaction. His body is literally reacting to the loss of his presence before it even happens. There is also that almost imperceptible tremor. It could be in the voice when he talks to you about something personal, or in your hands when he passes you something. It's pure adrenaline. His nervous system is in a state of maximum activation because being close to you is both the most desired and the most dangerous thing he can do. Also notice the posture. With other people, he may be relaxed or even sloppy, but when you're around, he unconsciously straightens up, expands the chest. It's a primitive display behavior. His body wanting to show itself in the best possible angle for you. And finally, notice the blush. Sometimes out of nowhere, his neck or cheeks turn red during a conversation with you. It's not shame. It is increased vascularity. His heart is pumping blood faster and it shows on his skin. It is the most honest physical evidence that something powerful is happening beneath the controlled surface. 8. The projection. When you become the mirror of his soul, this is the deepest and most disturbing territory of Jungian psychology. Projection happens when we put aspects of our own unconscious into another person. Jung spent decades studying how we fall in love not with the real person, but with the image of our non-integrated self that we project onto them. And when a married man sees himself reflected in you in ways he's never experienced before, he's not simply admiring you. He is having an encounter with lost parts of his own soul. The first thing you need to understand is that he sees in you qualities that actually exist dormant within him: freedom, spontaneity, courage, creativity, everything he sacrificed to build the stable life he has. So when it looks at you, it's looking at an alternate version of yourself. The road has not been taken. The unrealized potential. Jung explained that the male anima is the embodiment of everything that a man has repressed in himself to fit the socially accepted male role. Deep emotions, intuition, sensitivity, receptivity. And when a real woman embodies these qualities, she becomes the bearer of his anima. She is not just one person. It is a portal to the wholeness that he has lost. Notice how he describes you. The words he uses are always bigger than reality. He sees you as magic, inspiring, lit. It's not that he's lying or exaggerating. It's that you're seeing through you something that exists in his own unconscious. You have turned the screen where he projects everything he considers valuable but inaccessible in himself. There is a dangerous aspect to this. He's not loving you as you really are. He is loving the idealized image he projected on you, and this image carries a huge psychic charge because it represents the totality that he yearns for. Jung warned that this type of projection can be overwhelming because it is not based on real knowledge. It is based on unconscious need. Notice how he reacts when you show aspects of himself that don't fit his projection. Failures, insecurities, imperfections. There is a visible confusion, like you've broken a spell, because projection needs idealization to survive. Another fascinating aspect is that it starts to attribute to you powers that you don't have. He believes that you understand him in ways that no one else does, that you hold the key to his happiness, that with you he would be a better version of himself. This is pure projection. He is placing on you the responsibility for one's own individuation, which is the Jungian process of becoming whole. The hard truth is that as long as you are a projection, the two of you are trapped in an unconscious dynamic. He's not relating to the real person you are. It is relating to a symbol, and symbols cannot satisfy real needs. So there is a perpetual hunger, a feeling of almost but never complete. Also notice how he idealizes trivial moments with you, turns ordinary conversations into epic conversations, chance encounters and signs of destiny. Everything gains a disproportionate symbolic weight. This happens because his unconscious is desperate to give meaning to this connection. Jung warned that the most important work in a projection is to recognize it and remove it. Bring back to yourself what you were seeing in the other, but it requires a level of awareness that most people don't reach. So the projection continues. And the more time passes, the more fused his identity becomes with the image he has created of you. The most tragic aspect is that as long as he is projecting, he will never be able to really know you, and you can never have a real relationship with him, because real relationships happen between people. Do not enter a person and a projection. And here's the final question Jung would ask. Are you also designing on it? Do you see the real man or an idealized image of what he could be? Because projections are rarely one-sided. They are usually mutual mirrors where two people see each other through the lens of their own unresolved unconscious.